Hello, welcome to Down the Donut Hole podcast on the road. And it's never too late to wish someone a happy Mother's Day. Although, I suppose after some time it might become too late, yes.
Yeah. But you know what? Moms are usually very forgiving of busy schedules and other obligations and things like that, and they're used to sacrificing. But as soon as you remember that you forgot Mother's Day, make the call. Stop what you're doing because it makes a huge difference in your mom's life to know that you remembered her.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's really a lovely thing. I had a wonderful Mother's Day. I am visiting one of our kids in New York City, and we went for a picnic in Astoria along the river, and my grandson's girlfriend made us some gumbo, and so we had really, really a delightful time. Then I went on a little shopping tourist tour with my son-in-law, and it was just delightful, just a wonderful, wonderful day from beginning to end. In fact, when I went to bed last night, my face hurt from smiling so much. Now that's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Everybody would wish a problem like that. Not everybody has a great Mother's Day because being a mom doesn't end.
No, you don't get any time off, really, do you?
No. And a lot of times, especially if you have little kids, there's nobody, You might do Mother's Day for your mom or your grandma if you're really lucky, or your husband or partner's mom. But it would be you as the youngest one usually that's doing the cooking and, figuring things out if you're doing something home-centered, which is nice. I like that, too, because it can be very relaxing. And for two-income households, both people working, any weekend at all is a pleasure. It's just a bonus to be home, even if you do have to do a little cooking. But now with DoorDash and Uber Eats and all of those ways to get good quality takeout if you're in a city, if you're near to a city. If you're in the country, well then, make a casserole or something like that during the week and then have that on Mother's Day, which is a nice thing to do too. So I was very happy. I was watching when we flew here from Florida, and it was interesting watching moms all throughout that journey.
We had quite a long layover wait there, so we had a good sample of what you're talking about. So go ahead, explain.
Yeah. The dynamic between moms and their kids is pretty much what you would figure it is. I noticed, though, while I was there, that I saw a lot more fathers carrying their children or pushing the strollers than I have in the past. I'm a little more aware of that than I used to be because it was hard for men. Sometimes at the fair you'd see daddies with a little kid up on their shoulders or something like that. But I think whole families travel more now than they did. It's much more common to see whole families traveling. But I really enjoyed watching. I noticed you would occasionally see, did you notice the daddies that were sort of camped in a spot waiting for mom?
Yeah, I was that without the kids.
yeah, that's it. We saw several daddies, and the one guy was in charge of 3 children, and the youngest looked to be a little tiny girl, maybe 3, maybe, and 2 boys. And the boys, it was startling. It really was. They had captain's hats, white hats. They looked like, the hats that the Love Boat captain wears. They had hats like that. So maybe they had gone on a family cruise or something, is all I could, maybe suspect that that's what the family had enjoyed together. Or maybe they were headed in that direction and the captain's hats were just for a fun thing that they bought ahead of time. I don't know. But
yeah, that's a good bet, it sounds like.
Yeah, something near the water, something boat-oriented, because they were definitely like a naval captain's hat. And so the 2 boys were older. The middle boy, oh my goodness, he was hard to handle. Mom was nowhere in sight, and Dad had the 3 kids. And the middle kid was throwing himself down on the floor. He was in the way of several people. And the dad looked very focused on the youngest one, who was little, but pretty compliant. It didn't look like it was a terribly big problem to keep that kid under control. But you couldn't let a child that age just loose unless you were in a better off-the-track spot, which would have been good for him to maybe reset. But that might have been the place that they parted and decided, okay, you just stay right here and you don't think much about it in the moment. But anyway, the middle kid, he was throwing that captain's hat at his brother and trying to get something going, jumping around, weaving in and out, and people were pushing their luggage along, and I saw so many people that just narrowly avoided bumping into him because people were trying to make connections, and some people were on their phone probably figuring things out. And airports really are very, very hectic places, and people's attention is often micro-focused on something, vital information that they need to access, and so that was less than ideal. And for a long while I was watching that kid do that, Dad didn't seem to even notice. He didn't notice. And I'm thinking, how can you not know this? That he's going to get hurt.
It's one of those things where you have to tune out over time, it sounds like.
It could be a persistent thing and not just a kid that's tired of sitting around waiting for a flight or something like that, because that's part of the difficulty. But I do think, McDonald's has always been so good about having a little playground, and a lot of those are indoors. And I do think that if there were more of those around with picnic tables and not necessarily put out there by McDonald's either, maybe a little vending machine court where you could get some quick stuff, good for you stuff.
So in this particular example, it sounds like Dad was trying his best to be mother at the moment.
Well, he might have been trying his best, but he didn't have control of that middle kid. The older one had one of those little tablets, and he was amusing himself with that. But the middle kid was trying to disturb even that. And Dad either was so beat down from persistent behavior like that he didn't see it. But, eventually everything worked out. As soon as the mother came on the scene, she did something I thought was amazing. I'm not sure I would have been able to keep myself under control as well as she did with that behavior. Because he was literally trying to hurt his brother and literally trying to be sort of a little menace. I know it's a bid for attention. I know it is. And in a place like that, there's eyes on you and your parenting is in question. But she saw it as she was approaching her little family waiting there in that spot for her. She saw it from a distance, what was going on. The first thing that lady did, and I was so touched by what I saw. The first thing she did is kneel down on the floor, take the middle kid, and hug them. She gave the little one a bear hug and whispered something in his ear. And he gave her a hug back. And then he threw his hat at his brother again, and she picked up the hat and said something to him while she was still kneeling, said something to him, and set the hat on the little boy's head. And then she took him specifically by the hand. And I just thought, wow, that was really kind parenting. I remember when we were growing up especially, it was a different ethic about how to parent children. And I'm not saying that it's better or was better. I'm saying that there's probably a middle ground with gentle parenting and the more strict parenting that you and I both experienced. If I was behaving like that in any public place, I would have been really called. There would have been a very negative consequence for me. Not in public, probably, but the word would have been conveyed to me in no uncertain terms that if I persisted, that there would be a spanking waiting for me later when we got in private.
Yeah, that sounds familiar to me too.
But
Except I was just a model kid, so I
oh,
didn't have
sure
to.
you were. Sure you were. And all of those little traits have carried over into adulthood. Just perfection.
Not so much when you've been out in the world for a number of years, but no, I started out pretty docile and pretty easy. So, well, I've been
I
told,
could picture
anyway.
that, Dave. Actually, I can. You don't seem like the rambunctious type, and you don't seem like a kid that would be deliberately trying to kind of interfere with someone else's progress down the corridors there. Both our dads were very gentle people. I mean, when I say a spanking was waiting for me, I mean a spanking, a judicious spanking. I'm not talking about a beating. And I do believe that there is a huge difference between that. My siblings and I, we all understood what it meant if you got a spanking. You got your butt warmed and you got, probably sent to your room or parked in a corner somewhere for a little while until you figured out that was not how you were going to be doing things.
I'm familiar with that concept of appointment spanking. Yeah. I had a plan one time when I knew the appointment was coming up later.
Oh.
And, I went, scratched around the house and found a Bible and put it on my bed because that was the appointed spanking area. And I thought maybe he'd say, "Oh, okay, he's a good kid.
Praying.
He's a good kid, yeah.
He's a child of the Lord."
But I didn't realize at the time that maybe that it didn't work, and it's probably because in there about the rod and sparing the rod thing is that
you reminded him.
He reminded him that it was
duty.
okay. I think it worked the opposite way for me. He's like, "Oh, that's right. It's okay for me to do this."
And not only is it okay, but I will ruin this young person forever if I don't teach him the way to grow up. Nice shot, Dave.
It was a good try,
Yeah, it was. Hey, that was pretty good. I can picture you being a kid that got away with a fair bit because you were quiet. You are now,
I was crushingly shy, so I really wasn't up to anything. But that is a good cover for somebody who wants to get away with stuff, Just act like you're not the type. Oh, I would never. He would never.
Did other kids' parents like having their own kids be buddies with you because you seem studious and quiet?
Well, I don't know. I don't have any data about that. But maybe, think, oh, why can't you be quiet like him? And, don't cause any trouble.
Yeah, and you were a good student, right?
Sort of. The problem was that I took every opportunity I could to avoid going to school, including saying that I don't feel good a lot.
Oh. How did that work out for you?
So.
Did you need the Bible?
No. That was the only time I invoked the Bible. Maybe I realized later, oh, crap, when I heard that passage, spare the rod and spoil the child.
That's actually a really good story. A really good story. I grew up in a family of 5 kids. My mom was a busy lady. We were really, really close together in age. So there was...
You and your mom?
No, my siblings and I.
Oh.
No, my mom was 29 when I was born.
Oh, that's unusual.
And I was the first. So I consider myself a deputy parent. And I think because there were 7 years difference, almost 7 years difference, so it's fair to say less than 7 years distance between my birth and the birth of my youngest brother, five years after me, the
Wow.
last of the 5 kids.
So you really couldn't get any closer, really?
No, it would be like having twins almost. But I remember when my siblings were young, having to help out, and in many ways, I feel like I was a mom long before I gave birth to my first child, just because I was always around it, and always, as an older daughter, oftentimes you're expected to look out for the younger ones. And fair enough, I know that there's criticism about that now, about the expectations that fall on the eldest daughter, not usually on the eldest son. And the idea that nurturing and childcare is the province of women always, or should be, something that they take to automatically. Nowadays, there's a lot of thought about that, that should not be just an automatic expectation put on young girls. And I understand
I had
that.
a little bit of that because I was the oldest child too, and but it was more like just corralling them or chasing them around to make sure they didn't topple somewhere or whatever. So not too much hardcore work like you might have had.
Like babysitting and, just helping out with the chores. And now I look back on it and I think I'm of two minds of this idea about the eldest daughters being involved in parenting large families and, younger siblings, whether there's only one or two or is four like I had. My feeling on that is I think that you learn a lot. And in a way, yeah, maybe you don't act like a kid. But I don't know that that's a terrible thing to understand, the kinds of things that you have to look out for with younger siblings, or helping to feed a baby, or holding hands with a third or fourth little kid because mom is busy. You have a role. You have a really important role in the family. And I read, sometimes you read things online and people are really upset about the time they spent helping out with younger siblings. But I think they miss the point. You are needed. And there's something really nice about that, about being needed, about being part of something bigger than yourself. And you don't need to sign up for something outside the house because you already have that feeling. And I believe that when you have a role in childcare for your siblings, you are much wiser about the decisions that you make for having your own family because you're very clued up about what that entails. So I think I was ready,
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that generation was more used to that sort of thing.
Yeah. I also believe that those inequities, as long as the young girls are not held back from being able to get an education or get a job that might be able to be turned into a functional career, as long as the family's childcare needs don't hold the first child back, then I don't see a big problem with it. And I do think it's fair to compensate them. If you're taking a Saturday afternoon away from your eldest child to babysit for younger ones for some important thing that you have to do, then I don't think it's wrong to say, okay, I will pay you. Your time is valuable. There might have been other things that you would have liked to do and maybe should have been doing. And sometimes I got paid for babysitting. Most times not. If they were going out somewhere fun, which they didn't do often, looking back, I don't remember a terrible amount of date nights. I think that's a more modern thing. I don't remember that with my folks. I remember Dad bowled, and I remember they'd have a bowling banquet. Sometimes the wives were invited to that. I think the same with your mom.
Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah. A member of leagues and that sort of thing. He did get out in the evening, but mom was still on duty.
See, that's it. And that's what they're saying now. It has not changed significantly. It's better than it was in terms of division of household and childcare contribution in the households. Moms are still picking up the lion's share of the load. Dads are doing better, but it's still over double what the men do. And the women have significantly less me time and time away to socialize. Going to the grocery store, taking a kid to the doctor is not the same thing as you having time away from the house, away from your duties. And nowadays, see, it's different because back when we grew up, it was mostly single income households for the childbearing years. There wasn't the pressure on the moms to go out and work outside the home in most cases. You just lived in a smaller house or maybe a more modest neighborhood, something like that, if you had a bunch of kids, so that mom could stay home and be responsible for those things. But if she was a stay-at-home mom, all the work belonged to her. Dad was in charge of bringing in the bacon to pay the bills and all of that. And those were clear divisions of labor. But then, in your senior years, mom hasn't paid into the Social Security system as much.
That's completely wrong. They should be able to earn credits for staying at home, definitely.
Well, definitely. If they're doing the total child care and the kids aren't enrolled in some preschool full-time or anything like that, then yeah, absolutely they should. Because it's making society better.
Exactly. It's so wrong to the level of being demeaning for women to not be valued enough to understand that huge contribution to society of the ones who do go out to work and in support of all of that. And for them not to be able to earn no pathway to earn Social Security credits is completely wrong. And I don't know why we've never heard anything proposed like that even, or a discussion about it, unless I missed all that.
No, it doesn't seem. If it happens in narrow pipes. You know what I mean? It may be agencies that are focused on uplifting women. But that seems to be really, really being pushed to the periphery. And we're sort of behind the whole rest of the industrialized world in terms of offering maternity leave that's sensible. Some countries get 2 years. Imagine the luxury of that, especially if you decided to breastfeed your baby rather than relying on formula. If you didn't have to find a pumping room or this or that. Now, I'm not suggesting that all women should or want to stay home. In fact, the data shows that the opposite is true, that most women prefer to work and get out of the house and work toward a career, build their way up to some status in the field that they've chosen. But I think that, I know the data shows that in two-income households, when mom comes home, she's still contributing hours more every day for child care and household care, laundry, dishes,
Yeah, well, that's all important, but really the thing is the natural nurturing nature of women as a comforter or a nurturer.
I think
men are not naturally that way.
I don't think I think that we just haven't acknowledged it, Dave, or allowed it to be demonstrated or expected it to be demonstrated. Because you are very, very good with children. My brothers are really good with children. But they've been encouraged to be around kids, spend time with kids. Now, I know my one brother has all daughters. The other one has sons. And I would say that it is equally true that they spent quality time with their kids. And both were dual income households, and when they were home with the kids, they were really focused, on doing something with the kids. And that was, like I say, equally true for my brother, who is the father of daughters. He was a girl dad. I love that name, a girl dad. There's a certain chivalry about that, or a heroism about being a girl dad.
Yeah, well, that was my first experience, and did it pretty much on my own for 7 years.
Yeah.
So I do understand that.
You have told every Mother's Day about how in the years that you were raising your daughter on your own, that she gave you Mother's Day cards.
I know. It was so awkward for her. In school, and in the lower grades, of course, they do things like that, making cards for this, that, or the other thing. And on Mother's Day, and of course, she it was just me. And sometimes she'd bring it home, and I said, "Oh, what you got there?" She said, "This is for you, I guess."
I guess.
Poor kid.
Yeah. Yeah, that is hard. It is hard. But it's still a good thing. And it's really, I think, remarkable that she recognized that you were in that role too. Maybe not fully, maybe not the whole dimension of that, but understanding that you were her parent. That was great. That was great. And then, after time, she became my daughter. And so we have a very good relationship. And I love that connection, that closeness, and that understanding. I know sometimes when you're being you and a guy, sometimes all I have to do is look at your daughter, my daughter now too, but I can look at her and we both are thinking the same thing. And it's that girl connection that I cherish that. It's a worldview that is especially nice.
That's why I say and some guys listening to me say that men are not naturally nurturers. Will take exception to, and I do. At the beginning of all that, I would have, but I can remember times when I did my very best to comfort her, and she was really young, and usually you can figure out something to distract or whatever like that, but I realized I just don't have that in me. Not that I'm cold or callous or anything. It's just that there's that quality that women have naturally. That some sort of a vibe, that a child picks up on.
Well, that's my point with this eldest daughter thing. I think girls are coached through life toward that role. They're encouraged to try. Here, hold this baby for a second and don't move. Stay right in that chair and don't let go of that baby and don't let him roll off. And this could be like, in my case, I was like 3. Hold your little sister. And don't let her drop.
And I've had that request too. When I was young, and I,
So you might have been more prepared than you realize.
I sort of, didn't hate the idea of trying to hold the little baby, but on the other hand, I think I noticed in years after that it's always a bit awkward. When you try to, a guy will sort of hold a baby more awkwardly than a girl. Again, that's just the built-in nature of things.
Have you ever seen the things like sometimes online where they have the security cameras in a house and mom is at work and she checks the security camera and she finds there's dad and his brother tossing a baby kid back and forth between the two of them, not dangerously in a real way, but there's a little distance between them and they send the kid back and forth and catch him and the baby is laughing.
Oh yeah, I love
just
it.
Laughing their heads off. And I think that doesn't hurt a thing. That's not how mom does it. And mom and Aunt Jane aren't going to be, passing a kid like a football from one to the other. But it's that whole person approach. I think those experiences are every bit as valid and as wonderful and joyful as any closeness with mom. It may be a little different, but I think the magic is in the both, having as much of both parents' attention as possible. And so I do think that it's very important for us to maybe more consciously encourage boys to be parents, to be nurturers, to participate more fully in running a house. And I don't think we should give them a pass. I really don't. I think it's unfair to the boys. Now, I was reading a while back about this experiment that they did, and I believe they were set up. It was teenagers, pretty young, and I don't remember the exact age, but I want to say 14 or 15-year-olds. Or maybe 13 even. It was pretty young. I was kind of struck by that. And they had 2 houses, or maybe it was the same house, maybe it was a consecutive thing, but 2 houses, I'll say. And they had the boys and the teenagers live there. No adult supervision. They had security cameras and stuff like that. But the kids were in charge of running their life. They had to keep up with the necessary stuff. I forget how long the experiment lasted, but the girls so far outperformed the boys of the same age in management, household management. They quickly set up a chore roster, who was going to be doing what. They all decided on what they were going to eat. They made up a grocery list of what it was going to take to have that food. It was sensible food, good for you stuff. And so the whole of it was thought out from beginning to end. The boys, no. They immediately got to their gaming and the TV was on and they kind of put their feet up and just relaxed. And nobody talked about any of those necessary chores that had to be done. And they enjoyed the time. They were much more relaxed. And so I think it's an interesting thing that the girls just sort of took to that naturally.
Yeah, that's right. It's all the psychology experiments too that tried to show the innate difference between baby girls and baby boys. It's quite interesting.
At daycare, they don't really see that as much anymore. If they're providing, sort of creative toys that aren't like so much gender biased. I know we've talked about this before, but that if everybody are taught life skills, I think that's a good thing. And I think that in the end, everybody benefits if people understand, okay, this is what it takes to live properly. And by that, I'm not so much suggesting that there's a one-size-fits-all moral code, not so much that, although I lean toward that. But how to be practical. If you don't take care of things, then their useful life is a lot shorter. And that means you're going to be running out replacing stuff if it's vital equipment, or there's going to be a bunch of busted up junk around the house that's not functional anymore, that's taking up space. And, maybe it's dangerous with jagged pieces of plastic or something like that. And so if the young ones learn how to take care of stuff, basically it becomes easier to do it. It's like the difference between cleaning your room on a regular basis and kind of resetting things and getting things back to a reasonable status, and then waiting for 6 months until there's company coming and that you might have to sleep on the couch and let them have your room. And then it's just a mad frenzy to get things into some semblance of order. And maybe you don't have very much time at all to do that. And that's a panic. So I think the things that moms do, I think everybody should learn to do those. I mean, not just have them foisted on you with no prior lessons or mentoring. I think if we look at our moms and say, wow.
Yeah, well, that would help, but it's still going to be a difference that, due to nature will not ever be exactly the same.
No, and it doesn't have to be. As long as from the chore angle, everybody's pitching in. And especially with two-income households, there's no call or there's no rationale that it should fall more on her because she's female than on daddy.
No, those kind of things, no, like that doesn't matter either way. But
you can shove a broom or a mop, and you can learn how to operate the washing machine.
Chores with tenderness or the nurturing spirit or anything like that.
No, you just get your butt moving and go for it. So I think that's all important. But I will say too, I know a lot of men who are really great cooks and chefs. And a lot of them, because they just have this natural gift for that, they're the main cooks in the household.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the only exceptions.
Because I know a lot of men. One of my brothers is a superb cook. Oh, his wife was a good cook too. She's passed away, sadly. But she was an excellent baker, and just, everything that she cooked was really wonderful. But he was also. He used to like to do the grilling outside more than cooking inside, but he had a lot of his own recipes that he did. And one of our sons is a superb cook, much better than his mother. And his mother admits it. How about that?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, where did he learn it from?
He learned the basics. He didn't learn what he knows how to do for me. He learned the basics. He learned peasant cooking. He learned how to put together a pretty tasty, nutritious meal. He learned that from me. He learned how to do dishes for me. I can promise you that. But the kind of cooking he does now is so far beyond my sensibilities that it isn't even funny. But it's not beyond my taste buds because, wow, I love it when we go and he does the chefing, because every night, the guy puts out a meal that looks like something out of one of those food magazines.
Yeah, and he's fast, too.
Yeah, he is fast.
Yeah, efficient. And it gives you a break that's pretty rare.
It does give me a break. Sometimes I go out to try to help him, but he doesn't need or want my help. And I've been invited to stand down in the kitchen. And as a mom, it was so automatic for me. That being in that role was so visceral.
Well, you see
my
a kitchen and lots going on in the kitchen, and you figure, you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, there I am. And it took me a long time, and it took him really being very direct with me to have me set down the mama role and behave as a guest in his kitchen. And wow, that was an adjustment.
You don't know how to take time off.
Well, I never thought I should or had to. It didn't even blip my radar. That's how deep that role runs.
Yeah, but I've heard you say things like, I get meals every single day. I mean, the weekends I don't have them off either, and so
I admit that.
Stated such things, but I know
I don't complain about it often. But when it comes and you've been busy all day doing something else, and then you think, you know what? If I cook something, it isn't really even the cooking; it's the cleanup. It's like extra pots and pans and that sort of thing, and that's just no fun. The creative part of it is one thing, but it's the extra hour of cleaning up that's the problem. So I don't apologize for that. My point with telling that is because the roles are embedded. It's just the ways our society especially functions. And other societies, yes, but now that there are, both parents are out working, it's different than it was when I was a kid. Most of the moms in my neighborhood were home, which meant you couldn't get away with anything. You really couldn't, because somebody's mom would be looking out the window or find out about it or something, and they'd give your mom a call, and that was it. You were in trouble. So that whole concept of it takes a village, well, I was lucky because I grew up in that little village on a city block, where everybody's mom knew everybody else's mom and knew where the kids were. And we did a lot of, playing softball and baseball and basketball. My dad put up a basketball hoop, and we all played there from morning until night. And so I had a very good childhood. My mom worked awfully hard. And now that I am the age that I am, I appreciate even more fully how truly hard she worked and how many lessons she taught us without setting it up like, hey, I want you to learn to do this. She just did it and had us help, and we learned by doing.
Yeah, that's definitely familiar in my experience too. Going back to the waiting in the airport there was another story that I thought was interesting and kind of outraged me about the mother with the kids, and they were giving her trouble about baggage or something.
Oh, I was upset. Yeah, we were sitting there. We were getting close to having our flight boarding. There was another one that was immediately boarding. And one of the budget airlines, I'll put it like this, one of the airlines where you pay for the carry-on bag and they have very strict restrictions, ridiculously strict restrictions.
Yeah, you get what under the seat, basically. If you want to put anything overhead, you got to pay a ransom.
Well, this lady, she had 4 children. They were young, too. And clearly, she was busy every single second. I didn't see her sit down, put her foot up, or read a book, or even check her phone, because the 4 kids kept her pretty busy, and they were antsy to get on the plane. I don't know if that flight had been delayed or not, but it was a lot. She was managing a lot. And so she goes to check in, to, get on the plane. Everybody else was on. She was the last person. And the airline personnel had her put this backpack that was going to serve for her 4 kids, had put that backpack in one of those little framework things that test the size of it. So I heard her tell the person at the desk there, no, this has my kids' snacks in it. It looks puffy now, but it's not going to be puffy when I get in there, because I have things that'll come out of there. Their little juice boxes will come out immediately, and their snacks will come out of there, so I don't have to fit this under the seat. Must have been the under seat bag. And it was a generous looking backpack, but I'm not talking like the Appalachian Trail through pack. I'm talking about a little bit fat backpack. And the husband was there. He was with the kids. The kids had all gotten on boarded, and the question was whether they were going to charge her extra or make her, pay something. So she got shook down out there. And it really made me angry to see that. I'm thinking, this country has bailed out the airlines I don't know how many times. And that's come out of everybody's pocketbook. And so if they think that they're going to bilk some woman with 4 kids, little kids I'm talking here, not teenagers. I mean, she needed eyeballs on those kids not to be out there fitting her backpack in one of those stupid frameworks, because it was close enough, folks. This was not an outrageous thing. And when she explained what was in there, so she bent down, she took all the snacks, so she wasn't lying about it. And there was a teddy bear or something that the kid is going to clutch during the flight. And if we can keep the kids happy, I think if it takes a puffy backpack to do that, let it go. Just let it go, and you don't need to be putting more hassle on her, making it harder for her, because she's got to keep track of everything that's in that pack for 4 unreasonable little human beings. So God bless her. She handled it gracefully, and I commended her for that. But meanwhile, I'm sitting over there seething.
Let her in?
Yeah, they let her in because she was telling them right. She said, "This is my kids' snacks. We can't do this without that." And if they're charging, $2.50 or $3 for a little 6-inch package of potato chips, she can't do that for 4 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even if she's the richest person in the world, getting on the plane, why would you buy that?
Yeah, the trick with that is that you can carry stuff in your hand, in your pockets, in your coat, in your whatever. Yeah. And get away with that.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
when you're wrangling 4 little kids, you can't have that much crisps or something like that in your pocket. They're going to be all smashed up. Guys, we're out of time. I have to say, moms, you are a blessing always. Mm-hmm. Yep. And all of us, we understand you are a human being. And we forgive you for mistakes. And we love you for all the wonderful things you've done for us and all your sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And do something good for you, not just yesterday or last weekend. Pick any time you want and do something nice for you. We get it. And thank you so much, everybody, for being with us today. Bye-bye.